Good morning, everyone. All right, it's good to see you all here. I'm wondering if the Cowboy game hasn't affected our morning, or perhaps it was last week. Everybody went into hypnosis and hasn't been able to bring themselves back into reality here. So it's good to have you here this morning with us in 1111, and I wanted to make a highlight of a couple of things and then have someone come up and share just a word. I'm going to borrow the bulletin here real quick. I want you to take notice. Several people have been asking when we would get this started again, and on the back you'll see we're starting back up our Wine and Wishful Thinking, and our plan is to have it at Wine House, which has now it's opening up, I believe, in the next week or two. So we'll start meeting on first and third Mondays again for conversation, and some of the conversations center around what we talk about in here, and sometimes it'll just be other conversation around theology, faith, or whatever issues of the day are pressing, and just casual conversation. But it's a great little spot, and we loved helping her out and supporting her, and now that she's got it finished up after all the storm damage she had a year or so ago, we want to go back and see if we can't be helpful to that as well. So that's there, and you might take notice of that. Let's see, other announcements. I know I'm thinking there's something I was supposed to remember, and I can't remember it now. Anything I'm forgetting? All right, so I'm going to ask a friend of mine to come up here, because today is actually UMW Sunday as well, United Methodist Women's Sunday, and Cynthia Fisher. Thank you. I always know Cynthia McElrath. I've known Cynthia for years and years and years. She's now Cynthia Fisher, and she's going to come and share a word with us about UMW.
Good morning. How are you, boys and girls?
Yeah, we go way back.
After being on staff at this great church for 25 years, how could I be standing here for United Methodist Women? Well, the purpose of United Methodist Women is the same as it has been for over 100 years. The United Methodist Women are organized for mission, and that has and continues to be one of my passions. It's that we seek wholeness for ourselves and also for others, especially women and children. So this morning I'm here to encourage the women to join us. I'm putting together right here some bookmarkers that have the dates of all our meetings. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month right in this room. And we would love to have you. There's smaller groups that meet that are called circles, and they meet once a month too. And so if you're more interested in more fellowship and service to others, then you need to join a circle. We are very, very proud of our United Methodist Women. Like the heritage of this church, we are one of the best in the nation, and we're very, very proud of that. We have raised over $100,000 for children in our city and in our community. But I think why I show up every time is what I missed about being a part of this staff was to make a difference in people's life and to be of value to others. And that's why we're here, is to serve. So I encourage you to come and join us. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. so lovely. So I'm going to invite everyone, if we'll all stand, we're going to sing together. And if you bring forward your registrations and your offerings at this time, if you have them, let's stand and sing together.
Here we go, y'all ready? There are no steps to this sacred dance, just the feel of your feet on the floor. Arms in the air, as free as your bird, and as simple as a wave on the shore. Voices you heard, and no power here, find a rhythm that fits how you live. Silence the critical voices inside us that strain our lives through a sin. God of pleasure and wilderness, grant us the wisdom to dance with creation. God of wonder and bliss, give us love for the beauty of all our relation. As we stretch out our hands to the heavens so near, let this dance be our prayer. Verse 2, come on. We move in a mystery of all that we see. We dance for the wonder of thee. We dance through the struggles to remind us how the truth is finally free. Yeah. God of pleasure and wilderness, grant us the wisdom to dance with creation. God of wonder and bliss, give us love for the beauty of all our relation. As we stretch out our hands to the heavens so let this dance be our prayer. Fellas, what you got? With your brothers and leave all your cares. Come sisters and mothers and let down your hair. Stars of the morning and darkest of night, for the joy of creation's God's greatest delight. God of pleasure and wilderness, grant us the wisdom to dance with creation. God of wonder and bliss, give us love for the beauty of all our relation. As we stretch out our hands to the heavens so fair. Come on. God of pleasure and wilderness, grant us the wisdom to dance with creation. God of wonder and bliss, give us love for the beauty of all our relation. As we stretch out our hands to the heavens so fair, let this dance be our prayer.
Good singing, everybody. Good singing. So let's remain standing and let's open up with the word of prayer here. Let's pray together. Holy One, we come into your midst grateful again for a chance to be together as community, to be together one with another, and to be open to what it is you bring to us in every moment, but also this morning as we learn to let go, as we learn to be present to this time and attentive to wherever our thoughts are. Let them out, let them go, but be present to your words for us, your meanings for us in this moment. For this we give thanks. Amen. So I invite you to take just a few minutes or a few moments to greet one another with signs of peace.
They did.
You gonna play my guitar?
I may at the end. I don't know if I'll have time. But here's some. It does. I'm going to do a little performance thing right before.
Oh, before the Kairos song?
Before the Kairos song.
Oh, good.
So just hang out. So this week I came across something that a friend had written, a fellow storyteller by the name of Antonio Sacra, who is a wonderful storyteller out of the California area, and it moved me a lot because of where I am right now, where we are, but I think personally where I am. So this would be a little bit of a vulnerable moment, if you will, that I think also ties into the scripture. But it's a little bit of a performance piece, so I'm sort of splitting the message. It's not here because it was a last-minute sort of thought, and I wrote this this past couple of days. So I just want you to know that I'm going to do a little bit of a performance piece here for our story time, so to speak, and then we'll just share a couple of thoughts during the message. I don't want you to think that you might be here till 12:30 or 1 o'clock or something like that, and miss the kickoff or something. You might miss the kickoff anyway, but you won't miss anything else. As I was thinking about our text this morning, this idea of what it means to renew ourselves, I found myself being caught between a dream and reality. And it seems like life is lived between dream and reality. I had this dream as a children's author. This dream was, and still is to some degree, because I still have a couple of books that are still sitting out there published, that this fall, because my books are oriented around fall, this fall I have this dream that for once my book is going to take off. My book is going to take off, and Scholastic Book Publishers is going to email me and email my publisher, and they're going to say, we want to start carrying Tom's book, which will mean hundreds and hundreds of dollars of royalty, and my book will be all over the nation. The dream is to simply tell my stories, and someone's going to hear me online. I had this dream that someone's going to hear me. They're going to hire an editor. My story is fascinating. They're going to hire an editor. They're going to call me, and the editor will come and write down my amazing story, will offer me a 6-figure income to publish it. And it will be a bestseller. It will make people laugh and cry and believe in themselves. The dream is that I'll be able to retire and simply choose where I want to visit for my book signings, or for my interviews, or perhaps for a reading. Maybe it'll be Seattle. I won't have to go to Marshall, Texas. I can go to Seattle, San Francisco, perhaps even London, and I'll just go and I'll stay. I'll get to choose the kinds of hotels that I will stay in. The royalties will pour in. And sure, of course, the dream also includes that I'll spend a little bit on some charity. And perhaps the dream will include that I'll form a little foundation that will help others. The dream is that people on Sunday morning will come in here. They will fill this room. They will stuff this room, cowboy game or no cowboy game. And I will deliver an amazing message. The dream is that people will spontaneously applaud. And the online viewership for my... I guess I could sit down now. The dream is that the viewership for my sermons will explode, that someone will pick up my blog post and it will be read by thousands of people, that it'll be read by at least dozens of people. And my blog sites like Huffington Post will contact me so that I can start writing for them in their religion section. The dream is that Linda and I will retire in a mountain home in Vermont, and our kids become successful and self-sufficient and happily married. The dream is they'll even come to church on occasion. And they'll be exactly everything as I imagine, and they will have lots of grandchildren, and they will come to see us instead of always us having to go see them. The dream is that you make it filthy rich. The dream is that your contract, your song, your project, your sculpture, your story, your consulting business takes off, and you don't have to work for hours and hours or odd jobs. Your Facebook page is overflowing with accolades and praise, and you're busy every weekend with friends who are calling for dinner or lunch or dates. The dream is you live in a beautiful home, and your kids are all grown up, living self-sufficiently, marrying people you approve of, happy with careers and jobs and homes, and on until they come and see you in retirement, and you'll be healthy and wealthy and wise for years to come. The dream is your role, your project, your song, your coaching business, your conversation, your date will. The reality is the blank page, the day-to-day grind of living, the zero inbox, the friends I haven't heard from for months or years, the crappy, inconsiderate boss who takes advantage of you because he or she doesn't have a clue that you have dreams because you're a stepping stone to their dream. The reality is office politics and alliances, dysfunctional teams and backbiting and competition. The reality is a world filled with fear and divisiveness and polarized opinions and stress and struggling to make ends meet. The reality is a world stressed by global tyranny and populations seeking survival in places where people's dreams do not have room for them. The reality is a planet that is stressed by our dreams. Reality is also the day-to-day doubts and pep talks that we use in our head to make it to the next moment. And sometimes it's knowing that I don't belong here in this place, that I don't really have anything to say, that you and I sit for days and days at our desks or at a coffee shop or beneath a tree and writing and reading and working at our projects for whatever we do. Reality is also, though, lying down at night next to someone who loves you. Sometimes reality is simply lying down with a good book or your 8-year-old dog. Reality is a child babbling in the room next door down the hall, or the sound of your granddaughter laughing at something completely nonsensical. Reality is waking up to a brilliant sun in the morning. Reality is a still, quiet walk at 2 a.m. looking up at a full moon that you forgot was there. Reality is the risk we take and we use and discover joy and comfort in the last place we thought likely. And sometimes the reality is that where I am, that where we are, that where we find ourselves is just as it is and has to be just enough. My book may only sell a few hundred copies. That was in the first year. It may sell a dozen this year. My project may only be an exercise in working through the dream. My kids may not grow up or be as I imagined they would all be. Reality is knowing that at least one person, though, needs to hear what I have to say. That one person needs the conversation that you have to offer. That one person needs the idea that is smoldering and burning and cooking in your heart. It is a thing that only I can tell, that only you can share. That is the reality. And it won't get the attention of the Huffington Post, and it may only get a smattering of hits online, if that, and it may irritate some because it's not biblical enough or conservative enough or has enough funny jokes in it or is just a weird hypnotist. Reality is me doing it anyway. Reality is me telling the story anyway. Once upon a time. Once upon a time there was a hunter. And the hunter and his son went out into the woods. The hunter shot a bush rat, handed it to his son. The son took the bush rat as his father walked off, and he tossed it into the woods. Later that evening, when they got together and they looked at what they had not caught anything that day. The father turned to his son and he said, "Where's the bush rat? At least we can eat something and we won't starve." And the son looked up and said, "I threw it away." And the father took a stick and he hit his son. And the son got up and left. Now the son wandered for some time, and after days and days of wandering, the son came to a village where there was a king, and the king saw the young man and thought he looked so much like his own son, his son that he had lost years before, that he took him in and he said, "You will be my son. You are just like my son. You will be my son. You will have everything." And so the young man stayed for some time, and he had the kingdom. But the advisors kind of doubted the whole thing. And even his wife was a little confused and unsure. And so the advisors sent the son out with others and said, let's gather them all up, all of the sons, and we'll send them out into the forest with their horses. And then they are instructed to kill their horses. And this will tell us something. And so the son, the supposed king's son, and all the others went out into the woods and with their horses on horseback. And they all killed their horses, including the son they did not believe. And when the advisors saw, well, this has to be the king's son, because look at the abandon with which he just destroys and wastes resources. Only someone with abundance would be that careless. So they said it must be so. And they convinced the queen. And everyone was happy until one day the hunter returned. And the hunter wandered into the kingdom and found his son and said, son, you must come back with me. But when the king saw this, he went to the hunter and said, I'll make a deal. I'll give you anything you want. I'll pay 3 times that. Leave your son, turn, and go home. But the father he pleaded with his son time and time again, until finally the king could see that it came down to this. He said, the 3 of us must go out and decide. And so they went out into a clearing in the forest, all 3 on their horses, dismounted, and the king got off his horse, handed his sword to the son, and said, you can kill your father and have me and the gold and the kingdom. Or you can kill me and have your father, but you have to choose. Reality says, we've been there before. Reality says, you and I are in the woods. Reality says we have to make tough choices sometimes. Reality says that we're standing there with the sword and don't know which one we would do. Would we kill the king? Would we kill the father? What would you do? The dream is the magical ending, right? The dream is we get to keep it all. The dream is we all walk off happily living forever after in the forest with the kingdom and the father and the rat and everything else. Reality, however, says that sometimes I have to admit I have hit my son. Metaphorically, I have probably cut him down to size so many times. Reality says that, in fact, we have all done that. Reality, in fact, says that we all strike at one another, oftentimes without even realizing it. And I may do it again without ever knowing. I may do it in a staff meeting. I may do it here this morning or some other morning. I may do it in a conversation where I find myself. The reality is our words and our opinions and our thinking and our acting can cut at the very root of life itself. But the dream is that I'll be the first one, perhaps. Maybe I'll be the first father that breaks that cycle. I'll be the first parent. I'll be the first employer. I'll be the first fellow worker and teammate that will break that cycle of backbiting, of striking with the stick. I may be the first one who won't wound those who I love or work with or meet from day to day, unintentionally or intentionally. The dream is you on that path in the woods, and your pursuit is only one small bush rat, one small poem, one simple song, one conversation, one book that gets published but isn't selling anymore, one good sermon out of a full year of you just wondering why somebody even invited you to stand up here in the first place, one project meeting with executives that you met with the executives but you just couldn't pull off the sale, one attempt at a meaningful relationship but something wasn't right. Reality is that we may get struck ourselves by an axe in the wood along the way, and we're laying there in the dark, and the dream seems dead, and we ask ourselves, how do we break the cycle? Okay, so maybe reality is we got lucky. Maybe reality is that, in fact, we got the king's goods. Things are going great. I'm living the dream. We live in a kingdom, and so what if a few horses had to get killed along the way? The dream is no animals were harmed in the telling of this story. The reality is we are all stick and axe wielders. We are all horse slaughterers. We are rat-squandering children, and we are ruthless kings at times giving unsavory advice. So who would you kill? The father? The king? Would I kill myself? The reality is, I don't know.
Sing with us. Come, Spirit, come and fill us. We hunger now to be made whole. We bring our dreams, our joys and fears. Oh, touch us now and hold us near. Come, Spirit, come, be with us here. Both in our laughter and our tears. Transform us now and be released. Fill us with love and inward peace.
In my office, where reality reigns, there is a sign framed on the wall that says, "Be still and know that I am God." So this morning, right in your chair, I invite you to come away with me into a place of quiet, a place where the Spirit of God reigns in your heart, in your mind, in your life. Take this break from time, this time in between, to place yourselves in that safe place of love, that place where the divisions of our lives and the brokenness of disappointment and the pain of loss and the past, and even the hope for the future, reality or not, just stops. And let yourself breathe. Let the distractions fade away in this place of love and peace. Let the Spirit of the one who made you and knows you and accepts you as beloved is ready to receive you in peace. Let all those distractions fade away and just breathe and be there for a moment safe, connected, in unity with all that is and all that will be and all that has been. Just be there. And for that moment, it's okay. Be still and know. Be still and be still. Amen.
Romans 12, 1 through 2. Thanks. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. From the Message. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you.
Such a mess between my ears, like dishes in the sink. Stuff I don't believe just tumbles in till I don't have room to think. All my failures are on display, broken dreams of yesterday, stuff I should have thrown away, but I kept it here instead. I gotta empty out the inside of my head. I gotta empty out the inside. Gotta empty out the inside of my head. This could be a room with such a view, but it's covered up with junk. Blocking out the place the light gets through, so it keeps me in this funk. These dark clouds, they're stored away, just in case of a sunny day. I could can stand in the pouring rain with every tear I've ever shed. I've got to empty out the inside of my head. Empty out the inside of my head. I gotta empty out the inside. Help me empty out the inside of my head. I can turn this place into my home instead of some place that I dread. 'Cause it's the only room that's mine alone, and I live it till I'm dead. I'll sort through what I have found. Stuff that works I'll keep around, but I can't live weighted down with every cool word they ever said. I've got to empty out the inside of my head. I've got to empty out the inside of my head. I've got to empty out the inside of my head. I've got to empty out the inside. I've got to empty out the inside. I've got to empty out the inside. I've got to empty out the inside of my head. Help me empty out the inside. I've got to empty out the inside of my head.
So, a couple of quick thoughts. I worried about doing that piece because I didn't want to leave you all just depressed. And I like Bill, like David Wilcox, and like Anne Lamott, I've admitted it here before, and maybe you've been in this reality yourself, where sometimes you spend a lot of time in your head, and she says it's not a good neighborhood to be in. There are people in there who don't like me. And so it is sometimes difficult. We do find ourselves trapped in our heads. We find ourselves all the time comparing ourselves to one another and to the folks we work with and to the dream, the American dream, whatever that dream may be, the ecclesial dream of whatever church we may have at some point. We suffer from that same reality as a clergy. This struggle between the dream and the reality is really a struggle of what it means to be authentic, I think, and the masks we sometimes wear because of it, because of that inauthenticity or that struggle with what we think is the dream. And I'm often reminded, as I was thinking about this, about my uncle, who has been one of my wonderful mentors over the years, now several years deceased, but whose stories has always been so profound, and I've shared so many of them in here. But who often, he was a hunter and an outdoorsman, and he had lots of dogs. And I just remember him sometimes, some dogs, when he'd say, "Come on," and he had like 2 or 3, maybe 4 sometimes, he'd say, "Let's all go," and they all had different names. They had Blue, they had Butch, they had, I don't remember where some of them, he actually had a dachshund once, which I thought was the funniest thing, because I used to say, "Uncle Mac, you got a dachshund? You know, you got retrievers, and you got hound dogs, and you got blue ticks, and you got a dachshund?" And he said, "A dachshund is a can-do dog and a can't-do body." Don't ever dismiss its potential. And he's like, put a dachshund in an area where you think you got a bunch of rats, and he's going to town. But some of them were just slow, and he just would smile, and he'd say, "Yep, well, you know what? That's an old dog, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks." And it just wouldn't burn. It wouldn't learn. It wouldn't budge. And sometimes he'd keep them for a while, and sometimes he'd pass them on to family to sort of adopt. But that's often stuck with me, this idea, this text. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And we do live in these realities that we create for ourselves that are so ingrained and so difficult. And even as I was reading this piece that I'd written, even then I'm already feeling the old neuron trenches, right? Digging in, and I'm already finding my own emotions going down those same neural pathways. Some of you probably were doing the same thing. You were already getting into those negative spots and going down those routes with me and having trouble getting out of those old realities. How do we go about renewing our mind when we're caught in this tension between the dream and the reality? And I think it's fundamentally one simple thing, and I've talked about it in here before, but I'm going to echo it again this morning. I think it is that we have a way of looking at the world that needs to change. The question might be, where are we? And last week or 2 weeks ago, I asked the question when it was coming to, like, how do we get to heaven? Then I asked the question, well, then who's asking? And we talk about how we bring who we are. Well, we essentially bring that struggle. We bring that struggle between the dream and reality. That's who we are. The question is really now, where are we? And by that, I don't mean like here in this space, in this place and time. I mean, where are we in reality? How do you see your place in the world, in creation? And that's where we have to begin transformation, I think. I think that's where we have to begin renewing ourselves. Because I think fundamentally we see the world in two different ways. We see the world either as connected, reality and creation as connected, God in our holy midst and in and around and moving and outside and beyond us, but all of this, all part of us, all part of God, and God all part of us. We either see everything as connected or we see things as disconnected. And as we're going to see things as disconnected, it's going to be hard to get out of those trenches. Because all of our expectations move right along with this idea that we have some sort of control over those other factors. When Martin Buber talked about the I, thou versus I, that, he was basically I, it. He was basically saying, in very simple terms, I, thou recognizes that every moment, every encounter, as Jesus said in the parable of the sheep and the goats, every encounter is an encounter with the holy, with the divine, and an opportunity and an invitation to see what our connection is there. But the I, it is where we typically find ourselves in the world. And it's so hard not to. Because wouldn't you like to look at who are the Cowboys playing today? Falcons, okay, Atlanta, okay, thank you. Okay, I could talk about TCU and Texas Tech yesterday. I could talk about that because I watched that. And even as I watched it and got all upset and was getting anxious, rooting for my team, and then sitting there going like, stop that, Tom. And I had all these conversations going on in my head. Wrote for the Red Raiders. They're connected to the TCU players. They're all one. It's all one great game of life. Everyone should be having, but I found myself in that same reality that we all live in, which everything is it. Everything is object. And is it our object or is it their object? Is it our belief or is it their belief? Is it my dream or is it the immigrants, the refugees that are trampling on my dream? Is it my son the way he's supposed to be, or is it my son the way he is? It's just hard for us sometimes to not fall into I, it. But I think the challenge for us, the invitation in terms of how we renew, is that we have to learn how to lay all of that aside. We have to learn to redefine what it means to be a part of the dream. That to be a part of the dream is to simply participate in being connected to one another. Is simply being open, where every encounter is as much an opportunity to share the one word that we may have, the one gift, the one project, the one story, the one conversation, but to share it with a sense of that person, that moment, that experience is our teacher. Does that make sense? It fundamentally changes the way we look at the world around us. I loved being in Aikido when I was in Aikido, and I can't do it now because I have this basal thumb joint stuff that completely, all of Aikido is based on manipulating a thumb, a slight little movement, which then brings you down to your knees. In my case, you just grab my hand and I'm brought down to my knees. But it's this simple sort of just manipulation like a dance. But the coolest thing about Aikido when I was taking it was you would walk in and everybody was out there. The fourth Dan black belts, the first day student. And it wasn't this, let me show you. It was this, let's see what happens. And if I would ask them, how come I didn't learn that? It wasn't like, well, because you're doing it wrong. It was more, well, show me what you're doing. They would ask me to show them what I was doing. And then I would learn it wasn't working, or they would learn there was something they hadn't seen. It was a mutuality that existed, everybody on the playing field at the same level, interacting and teaching one another. Fundamentally, the challenge for us to renew our minds, I think, is to really begin to see the dream differently. That's hard. And I think it's a practice. And with just a minute left or so, I want to suggest that one way we do that is that we begin to try to align ourselves more faithfully to that dream, or to that worldview. And if we can say to ourselves that, all right, I'm going to go ahead and buy into this. I'm going to go ahead and try to understand reality as that we are all interconnected, that we are all part of God's creation, that God calls us to be there for one another because we are part of one another, that's the only way our world can experience healing, that's the only way that our teams can experience working together, the only way that our relationships work is when we can get to that place where we are there for one another because we are part of one another. Then at least if we're willing to go there, then we have to simply start practicing. I read this book, and I'm reading actually in the middle of it. I encourage you to pick it up. I may preach on it sometime as a series, but it's an amazing book by a guy named Robin Myers. And the book is entitled Saving Jesus from the Church, which I think is an amazing title, because it almost makes no sense at first, right? And then you look at the subtitle, Why Worshiping Jesus, instead of worshiping Jesus, we need to follow Jesus. And it makes sense then. And one of the things that he suggests is that if we can step away from beliefs for a while and simply practice being there for one another in all of our situations, let go of fears, let go of the definitions and the divisions. And it's difficult because we don't, if we're going to believe that the world is disconnected and Darwinistic, and therefore it's just a matter of whether my dream can step on your dream, then that's going to be the way it is. But if we're going to try to practice this idea of connectedness, we have to try to connect to it. We have to try to be present to it. We have to try to find an inner practice that is mindful of it. And the way to do that is to begin to ask ourselves to step back from encounters, to step back from debates, to step back from disagreements, to step back from possessiveness, to step back from protectiveness, and to simply say, how am I connected to this? It's a daily, moment-by-moment invitation that invites us into a place where we can renew our minds. And I think, in following along with the wonderful little slogan that we have as Methodists, we might just transform the world in the process. That's my reality. Amen. Here, if I don't usually bring an invitation here unless somebody's contacted me early on. But if you are interested in joining this congregation, you can come up while we're singing. And then if you're visiting with us, I failed to mention that you find a CD back there of the band's music. It's good inspirational music, and also it's just a wonderful way to remind yourselves about what we're all about in here. So pick one of those up, and then I think that's it. You guys have a great week. We'll have a blessing afterwards, but let's all stand and sing this song together.
small, stand on a star, and blaze a trail of desire through the darkening dawn.
With a blessing, and you guys will, if you are interested in a Cowboy game, you can, you'll make that at some point. You'll get there before the kickoff gets too far. If you're not, stick around and visit with one another for a little while and experience some conversation time. We'll have some music playing. Let's bow for a blessing. Holy One, it is so difficult to find our way through this world without falling into these traps of our inner thoughts, our inner conversations, constantly struggling to find our place in the world and to live out a dream that may not in fact be who we really are. Remind us who we are, not just as ourselves in relation to you, but who we are in relation to creation, who we are in relation to one another. Inspire in us an openness to learn from one another and from all of our moments, that we might respond with curiosity and sudden, unsolicited, unexpected surprise and joy. Bless us as we go from this place. Amen.